Welcome to the CompTIA Project Plus Prepcast by baremetalcyber.com. For the CompTIA Project Plus PK005 exam, memorizing terminology is more than just a helpful skill. It is one of the core requirements for success. Many of the questions are built around your ability to recall the exact meaning of a term or process, often in scenarios where multiple choices appear reasonable. If your recall is slow or imprecise, it becomes easy to confuse similar concepts and miss subtle distinctions that could determine the correct answer. Developing strong recall strategies ensures you can identify the right term quickly, even under time pressure. A key rule for effective memorization is to understand the term before you try to lock it into memory. Comprehension provides a mental framework that makes recall easier and more accurate. For example, learning that scope creep refers to uncontrolled expansion of a project's deliverables, and knowing the negative impact it can have helps you remember both the term and its meaning. Without that deeper understanding, a memorized definition can easily fade or be misapplied during the test. Mnemonics are a proven way to store ordered or grouped information in a more memorable format. They work by linking abstract facts to patterns, sounds, or stories that are easier to remember. For instance, the roles in the RACI chart responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed can be connected to a short phrase or visual story that keeps them in the correct order. Creating your own mnemonic phrases makes them more personal, which strengthens retention when you are under exam conditions. Breaking down complex ideas into smaller, manageable chunks can dramatically improve retention. Instead of trying to memorize an entire process like change control in one sitting, divide it into distinct steps and focus on one segment at a time. Once you have mastered each section, you can link them together into a complete process. This approach mirrors how the brain organizes information, which makes recall smoother and more reliable. Making personal associations is another powerful tool for long-term memory. By linking a term to something familiar in your own life, you give it extra context that makes it harder to forget. For example, associating risk mitigation with the safety measures you take when driving on icy roads transforms it from an abstract project term into a concept anchored in real-world experience. These personal connections also make the study process more engaging. Flashcards remain one of the most effective tools for building recall, particularly when used for active testing rather than passive review. Digital flashcard platforms such as Anki or Quizlet make it easy to practice in short sessions and to automate spaced repetition so you see challenging terms more often. To make the most of flashcards, test yourself in both directions, prompting with the term and recalling the definition, and also prompting with the definition to recall the term. Randomizing card order prevents your brain from relying on position rather than true knowledge. Spaced repetition itself is a cornerstone of effective memorization. By reviewing terms at increasing intervals, such as after 1 day, then 3 days, then a week, you signal to your brain that the information is important and should be stored for long-term access. This is far more effective than cramming, which may provide short-term gains but often fails when you need the knowledge weeks later. Structured spacing ensures the information is still there on exam day. Visual mapping can also be a highly effective memorization tool. Drawing process maps for workflows like a procurement cycle, or creating term clusters around a central idea such as project communication, allows you to see how concepts relate to one another. This kind of visualization creates a framework in your mind, making it easier to recall both the terms themselves and the context in which they are used. Teaching a concept out loud, whether to a colleague, a study group, or even just to yourself, forces you to process the material more deeply. Explaining a term in your own words strengthens both comprehension and memory. If you can clearly teach a concept without notes, you can be confident that you know it well enough to recall it during the exam. Comparing and contrasting similar terms is another effective method to prevent confusion. Many Project Plus concepts appear similar at first glance, but have important distinctions in definition or application. For example, Change control and issue management may both involve decision-making and documentation, but their triggers, timing, and focus are different. Creating side-by-side distinctions helps you quickly identify the correct choice in a question. The CompTIA exam objectives themselves make an excellent vocabulary list. By turning each bullet point into a flashcard, definition, or sample question, you ensure that every term you study is directly tied to the exam. This not only organizes your memorization but also guarantees full coverage of tested material. When memorizing processes, pay attention to the verbs and actions associated with each step. For example, conduct impact assessments involves evaluation, while approve changes involves authorization. Knowing the action tied to the step anchors the term's purpose in your memory, making it easier to recall in a scenario-based question. Finally, reinforce your definitions with real-world context whenever possible. If you can picture where a term would appear in a project meeting, a report, or a planning document, you are more likely to recall it when you need it. For instance, thinking of a Gantt chart as a visual timeline for project tasks makes the definition more concrete and less abstract, which strengthens recall during the test. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Grouping related terms by domain is one of the most effective ways to create a mental structure for recall. For example, you can study all the risk-related terms together, then move to a block of scheduling tools, then focus on quality-related documents. By keeping terms from the same domain together, you reinforce the natural associations between them, which not only helps you remember them faster, but also mirrors how the exam content is organized in the PK 0-005 framework. Process terminology deserves deliberate focus because many questions reference actions tied to specific phases in the project lifecycle. Knowing which processes occur during initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, and closing will help you avoid choosing answers out of sequence. It is equally important to know the associated outputs, the roles responsible for each activity, and the tools linked to each step, because scenario-style questions often test all of these elements together. Reinforcing your study through multiple formats increases both retention and confidence. Reading a definition, hearing it in audio form, and writing it down from memory all work the brain in slightly different ways. By engaging these varied learning channels, you strengthen the memory trace for each term. This approach keeps your sessions from feeling repetitive while increasing your ability to recall a term quickly under exam conditions. Using terms in full sentences adds an important application layer to your study. For example, saying, quote, "The Change Control Board reviews and approves major change requests," forces you to connect the term with its role and purpose. This makes it easier to recognize the correct answer when the question describes a scenario instead of asking for a straight definition. It is an effective bridge between memorization and applied understanding. Self-quizzing is a highly effective way to prepare for the pressure of test day. Speaking terms aloud or writing them down without looking at your notes forces active retrieval, which strengthens recall much more than passive reading. Repeatedly testing yourself in this way builds speed, reduces hesitation, and makes your memory retrieval process more automatic. Tracking your mistakes is just as important as reviewing your successes. Keep a focused list of terms that you consistently confuse or miss during practice sessions. Review these terms more often than your stronger ones, especially in the weeks leading up to the exam. Concentrating your energy on these problem areas will give you the largest improvement in your overall readiness. Your study time should focus on the vocabulary most relevant to the PK 0-005 exam framework. These include items such as SLA for Service Level Agreement, SOW for Statement of Work, PERT for Program Evaluation Review Technique, and role names like Product Owner. Using the official CompTIA acronym list as a reference ensures complete coverage of the terminology that the exam blueprint expects you to know. Labeling each term by both its domain and its function can create quick mental retrieval cues. For example, if you tag a flashcard with Domain 3 tool or Domain 2 role, you start to build a mental filing system. Over time, your brain learns to retrieve the term from the correct category automatically, which saves time and reduces uncertainty when answering questions. It is also essential to memorize both the definition and the practical application of each term. For example, a RAID log, meaning risks, actions, issues, and decisions, is more than just a list. Understanding when and why to use it during a project ensures you can select it confidently in a scenario that calls for a record of project decisions and unresolved items. In the final days before your exam, plan regular vocabulary refreshers. Even well-learned terms can fade if they are not reviewed, and a quick cycle through your flashcards, notes, or audio episodes can lock them back into place. Prioritize the terms you have historically found difficult, but do not ignore the stronger ones. Entirely balanced recall across all domains is the goal. Solid command of the vocabulary improves pacing, confidence, and accuracy. When you instantly recognize and understand the terms in a question, you can spend your mental energy analyzing the scenario rather than decoding the language. This reduces stress and helps you work more efficiently, leaving more time for the most challenging items on the test. In the end, effective memorization for the Project Plus exam means combining understanding with repetition, structure, and varied learning methods. By grouping terms, using spaced repetition, applying them in sentences, and reviewing them in multiple formats, you build a strong knowledge base. This layered approach ensures that the key terms and processes are not only familiar but ready for quick, accurate recall when you sit for the PK0-005 exam. Thank you for listening. Please follow baremetalcyber.com on social media and check out our books at cyberauthor.me.